The sky above the colony was a dark, bruised gray, heavy with clouds that threatened to break at any moment. Cale tightened his coat and glanced toward the horizon. His small hydroponic farm, nestled in a shallow valley, was all he had. Beyond the edge of the valley stretched the barren plains of Terrace 4, a planet known for its unpredictable storms. It wasn't rich soil or abundant water that drew him here, it was isolation. The kind that let him raise his daughter, Lena, in peace, away from the endless noise of crowded city planets. "Papa," Lena called from the doorway of their small home, her voice tentative. "Do you think the storm will be bad tonight?" Cale gave a reassuring smile, though worry tugged at his chest. He crouched to brush a strand of her hair from her face. "It's just a little rain, Lena. Nothing we can't handle." Lena didn't look convinced, but she nodded and went to gather a small basket of supplies. The storm had been gathering for hours, and the winds were already starting to howl across the open plains. Cale checked the structure of their home again, tapping the metal panels to make sure they were secure. Years of experience had taught him to trust nothing but his own preparation. He stepped outside, letting the wind whip around him. The clouds overhead swirled, dark and fast-moving, carrying a chill that made him shiver despite his thick coat. Cale had seen storms like this before, but each one brought a new level of unpredictability. Lightning forked across the sky, briefly illuminating the distant hills. Somewhere out there, he thought, a traveler might be caught unprepared. It was then that he noticed movement near the ridge, a figure staggering through the wind and rain. Cale squinted, trying to make sense of it. The figure, tall, slight, and cloaked, was moving with difficulty. Something about the way she carried herself suggested strength, yet the storm seemed to push her down with every step. Without thinking, Cale grabbed his flashlight and headed toward the ridge. "Hey," he called, shouting over the roar of the wind. "Are you all right?" The figure paused, then stumbled slightly, her hood falling back to reveal dark hair plastered to her face. Cale's heart skipped. She looked human, but there was something in her eyes, a calm, controlled fear that made him hesitate. I need shelter," she called, her voice strong despite the storm. "Please. Just a place to wait out the rain." Cale didn't hesitate. He ran forward, reaching her as a gust of wind nearly knocked her off her feet. He steadied her, gripping her shoulders. "You're in luck. You won't find better shelter than my home nearby." She gave a small nod, grateful but wary. Together, they trudged back to Cale's house, fighting the wind and the pelting rain. Lena, who had been watching from the doorway, ran out with a blanket. "Papa!" "Who is she?" Cale set the woman down gently. "Lena, this is a friend. She needs to dry off." The woman smiled faintly. "I'm Selene," she said, her voice soft now, more composed. "Thank you for helping me." Inside, Cale stoked the small heater and offered Selene dry clothes he had prepared for Lena's winter use. She accepted them with quiet dignity, changing quickly and wrapping herself in the warmth of his home. Lena, curious and unafraid, watched closely. "Where are you from?" Lena asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Selene hesitated, then shook her head. "Somewhere far away," she said. "Somewhere that doesn't matter right now." Cale noticed the way she avoided specifics, the subtle hints of authority in her posture, the careful way she surveyed the room. She wasn't just any traveler. But for now, he didn't push her. For now, all that mattered was that she was safe from the storm. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the metal walls. Cale checked the windows, and then turned to Selene. "You'll be safe here tonight. We don't get many visitors, so it's quiet. That's the best protection against the storm." Selene nodded again, studying the little house with interest. It wasn't luxurious, just a simple dwelling with practical furniture and a warm kitchen, but there was a charm to it, a sense of careful, thoughtful living. "It's very peaceful," she admitted. Cale smiled, a little embarrassed. "That's the idea. I like it quiet. Lena likes it quiet." He looked at his daughter, who was now perched on the couch, observing Celine with wide eyes. "Peaceful, huh, Lena?" Lena nodded. "It's nice, Papa. But she looks like she's important. Maybe like someone who runs things." Kale chuckled, brushing her hair back. "Everyone looks important when they're soaked in cold. That doesn't make it true." But even as he said it, Kale couldn't ignore the subtle signs, the way Celine's eyes scanned the small interior, the careful way she handled the simple objects around her. She had lived a life of control and command, far removed from the slow rhythm of a hydroponic farm. The storm raged through the night, shaking the house with its power. Lightning illuminated the walls in sudden, stark flashes, casting moving shadows across Celine's face. Kale stayed up, listening, checking the perimeter, and ensuring his daughter slept safely. He could feel Celine's presence nearby, calm yet alert, a silent reassurance that perhaps he was not alone in facing the night's dangers. Around midnight, the wind grew so fierce that the house groaned under the strain. Kale went to the door and peered outside. The storm had grown beyond the ordinary. Debris flew across the plains, small trees bent and cracked, and the rain fell in sheets that stung his skin. Even here, tucked into the valley, nature's force was overwhelming. Celine joined him at the door, looking out with him. "It's powerful," she said simply, her voice carrying over the wind. Kale nodded, realizing that for someone accustomed to controlled environments and structured challenges, the raw power of a storm on Terrace 4 could be humbling. "I've lived here a while," Kale said. "You get used to it, or you don't last long." She turned to him, studying his face for a long moment. "You're capable," she said. There was no flattery in her tone, only recognition. Kale shrugged, unused to praise. "It's not about me," he said. "It's about keeping Lena safe. Everything else is secondary." Celine's expression softened slightly. I understand. Survival, in its simplest form, isn't about power or money. It's about protecting what matters." Kale didn't argue. He felt the truth of her words. And even as the storm threatened to tear the world outside apart, inside the small house, there was a fragile sense of safety, of shared purpose. For the first time in years, Kale realized that shelter wasn't just walls and warmth, it was trust. And tonight, he had given it to someone who needed it. Morning was far away, but Kale knew the storm would pass. And when it did, the world would look different, not because the storm had changed it, but because he had opened his home and his life to someone unexpected. Celine sat quietly, letting the warmth seep into her bones. She had found shelter from the storm, yes, but in the quiet moments, she realized that perhaps she had found something far more rare, a place where she could let go. Even for a little while, Kale watched her, not fully understanding who she was or the challenges she carried, but knowing that tomorrow, the world would ask more of them both. And somehow, he felt ready. The storm had passed, leaving the plains of Terrace 4 wet and glistening under a pale, timid sunlight. Kale stepped outside his home, breathing in the crisp, clean air. The wind had calmed, but puddles of water reflected the heavy clouds that still lingered above. Lena ran barefoot through the mud, laughing despite the damp chill. Kale smiled, shaking his head. "Careful, Lena. You'll catch a cold if you keep running like that." She laughed again, unbothered. "I don't care, Papa. Look at the puddles, they're huge." Kale's attention shifted toward the ridge where he had first found Celine. She stood there, watching the plains quietly, her wet clothes replaced with dry, practical attire he had offered. There was something about her that demanded observation, even in silence. "You're up early," Kale said, walking toward her. Celine turned her gaze toward him. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, her voice calm and measured. "The storm, it makes you think." Kale nodded, understanding immediately. The storm had a way of forcing people to face the raw reality of life, the fragility of shelter, the strength of nature, and the importance of those who protect you. He gestured toward the farm. "Breakfast is ready. You can join us if you want." Celine glanced at Lena, who waved excitedly. Then she nodded. "I'd like that." Inside, the small kitchen smelled of warm bread and roasted tubers. Lena sat at the table, eagerly spreading jam on her toast. Kale poured a cup of hot tea for Celine. Watching her with mild curiosity, there was a quiet confidence in her movements, the kind only someone who had managed difficult responsibilities could possess. "So," Kale said cautiously, "you're a traveler from somewhere far away. Do you always get caught in storms like that?" Celine smiled faintly. "Not usually. Storms like that are rare even for me. But sometimes, life doesn't give warnings. You just have to be ready." Kale raised an eyebrow. "You sound like you've dealt with more than just weather." She paused, then nodded. "You could say that." The conversation hung in the air, unsaid words lingering. Kale respected that she didn't explain everything. Some people carried burdens too heavy to share with strangers, even those they trusted. For now, survival was enough. After breakfast, Kale showed Celine the farm. Lena followed eagerly, pointing out the rows of hydroponic plants. "These are my favorites," she said, touching the leaves gently. Celine crouched to examine the plants. "They're thriving," she said. "You take very good care of them." Kale shrugged. "It's a lot of work. But it keeps us fed and busy." Celine's gaze shifted to the tools and equipment scattered around. "You're resourceful," she said quietly. "I can see that. You make the most of what you have." Kale felt a small warmth in his chest. Resourceful. He had never thought of himself that way, just someone trying to survive. But hearing it from Celine, someone clearly used to measuring people by their abilities, carried weight. For the rest of the morning, they worked side by side. Kale repaired a section of the water system damaged in the storm, while Celine observed and offered suggestions that were practical and precise. Despite her calm demeanor, it was clear she had knowledge far beyond the colony's simple technology. Lena, meanwhile, helped gather small tools and learned about the plants, occasionally asking questions. Celine answered patiently, demonstrating a rare kindness and patience, despite her otherwise authoritative presence. Kale watched them together and realized something he hadn't expected. Celine wasn't just surviving here. She was contributing, adjusting to life at a pace far slower than her usual world demanded. As the sun climbed higher, Kale noticed a subtle change in Celine's demeanor. She paused often, listening, scanning the distant horizon. It was the same way she had observed his home the first night, always alert, always calculating. Kale couldn't help but wonder what danger had followed her here. "Is everything all right?" he asked cautiously. Celine turned to him, meeting his gaze. "I think someone might be looking for me," she said carefully. "Not the storm. Not nature. People." Kale stiffened. "People?" She nodded. "Yes. People who don't care what or who gets hurt to get what they want. Powerful people." Kale's mind raced. Terrace the 4 was remote, hardly a place anyone would come hunting a stranger. But she had that same air of authority that suggested she could indeed be a target. "We'll handle it," he said firmly. "You're not alone here." Celine studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I didn't expect this. That someone like you would care enough to protect me. But I'm glad you do." Kale smiled slightly, though unease crept in. "I've learned a long time ago that helping someone in need isn't a choice. It's just what you do, especially if there's a child involved." He glanced at Lena, who was now attempting to climb the small greenhouse ladder. "And speaking of children, well, Dodd." Unquote. Lena laughed as she clumsily climbed down. "Papa!" "She's helping me." Celine crouched again, showing Lena a safer way to manage the ladder. "There. See? Easy." The afternoon passed quietly, but tension lingered in the air. Kale could feel it, the sense that something bigger than the storm was coming. He began reinforcing doors and windows, improvising simple alarms using tripwires and bells. Lena watched curiously, occasionally asking questions that Kale answered with patient explanations. "You're really careful, Papa," Lena said. "Is it because of the storm?" Kale shook his head. "Partly. But also, you never know what life will throw at you. Storms come in many forms." 8. Celine's eyes lingered on him. "I see that now. You're prepared for more than just nature. You're prepared for people too." Kale gave a small shrug. "You learn fast when you have someone depending on you." By evening, the horizon darkened again, not with clouds, but with movement. A small ship appeared, hovering just above the plains. Kale tensed, his instincts telling him this wasn't a friendly visit. Celine's expression sharpened. "They found me," she said quietly. "I didn't think they would track me here." Kale's mind raced. "We'll deal with them. But first, Lena stays inside, no matter what." Celine nodded. "Understood." They watched as the ship descended, small drones detaching and moving toward the valley with purpose. Kale's heart pounded. He had no weapons, no advanced technology, just his wits, his knowledge of the land, and his determination to protect Lena and their home. But now, it seemed, those simple skills would be tested in ways he had never imagined. Celine turned to him. "Kale, I need your help. Not just with shelter, but with survival. Out there, it's dangerous. They won't stop for anyone." Kale looked at her, seeing not just a visitor or a stranger, but someone who trusted him with her life. He nodded. "Then we fight smart, not just hard. I know this land. I know how to protect what matters." Celine studied him for a long moment, a small smile forming. "Then maybe we can do this together." As night fell, the two of them prepared. Simple defenses, careful traps, and a plan to use the terrain to their advantage. Lena slept safely inside, unaware of the danger approaching. Kale felt a mixture of fear and resolve. He had protected his daughter through storms before. But this was different. Outside, the drones moved silently, their sensors scanning the valley. But Kale and Celine, unlikely allies, had something more powerful than technology. Knowledge, intuition, and trust. And as they stood together, ready to face whatever came next, Kale realized something profound. Sometimes, survival wasn't just about walls or weapons. Sometimes, it was about the connections you made, the people who trusted you, and the courage to stand together when the world seemed to turn against you. Tonight, the storm had passed, but a new challenge had arrived. And for the first time, Kale knew that helping Celine wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of a journey that would test everything he believed about strength, family, and courage. The night was darker than usual, with only the faint glow of the twin moons reflecting off puddles left by the earlier storm. Kale crouched near the edge of his property, his eyes scanning the distant plains. The wind carried no rain now, but there was an unnatural stillness, a quiet that made every sound feel louder. Celine stood beside him, her posture alert, eyes fixed on the horizon. "They're close," she whispered. "I can feel it." Kale nodded. He had never faced something like this before, not with drones, not with anyone trained and armed to take what they wanted. But his determination to protect his home and Lena was stronger than fear. "Then we get ready," he said, voice steady despite the tension. Back inside, Lena slept soundly, unaware of the danger approaching. Kale glanced at her through the window and felt a pang of responsibility sharper than any fear. He wouldn't let anything happen to her. Not now. Not ever. Celine moved quietly to his side, pointing to the faint glimmers of light in the distance. "Those are drones. They're scanning for life signs. They'll find us if we're not careful." Kale studied them. The drones were small, sleek, and fast, too advanced for a simple colony like his to handle directly. "Then, we don't fight them head-on," he said. "We use the land. I know every inch of this valley. We can make it work." Celine nodded, trust evident in her eyes. "I'll help. You guide me, and I'll provide what tech I can." The two moved swiftly, setting simple but effective traps using everyday items. Tripwires tied to cans, small pits hidden under foliage, and improvised alarms that would alert them to movement. It was not perfect, but it would slow down anyone trying to approach undetected. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last. The faint hum of the drones grew louder, mechanical and precise. Cale crouched low, his heart pounding. "They're closer. Stay calm and follow my lead." Celine followed without question, moving silently and carefully. She had been trained for danger before. But here, in the wild, with nothing but instinct and clever planning, she realized just how different survival could be. It wasn't just about technology, it was about human intuition, the ability to read the land and predict movements. The first drone passed over a pit trap. A small explosion of mud and noise sent it spinning slightly off course. Celine allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Good thinking," she whispered. Cale grinned faintly. "Years of surviving storms teaches you a few tricks." The second drone was faster, its sensors scanning more thoroughly. Cale and Celine ducked behind a cluster of hydroponic towers, letting the machine pass by harmlessly. Celine's hands moved deftly, adjusting small devices that she had brought, tiny sensors and jammers that could interfere with the drone's scanning. "This will confuse them for a while," she said quietly. "Not long, but enough." Cale nodded. "Long enough for us to plan the next move." The drones regrouped, moving in a coordinated pattern, scanning the valley with methodical precision. Cale knew it wouldn't be long before they discovered the main house. He motioned to Celine. "Time to move closer. We can't wait here." They crept toward the home, keeping low, using shadows and the remnants of the storm's debris as cover. Celine followed his lead, trusting his knowledge of the terrain completely. As they approached the house, Cale whispered instructions. "We need to create a distraction, something loud enough to draw them away from the main building." Celine considered, then nodded. "I can overload the small power system in your greenhouse. That should create a bright flash and some noise." Cale approved. "Do it. I'll lead them in the wrong direction, while you handle the tech." The plan was risky, but both knew it was the best chance they had. Celine moved quickly, adjusting wires and preparing the system. Cale readied himself, ensuring the traps and alarms were set to maximize confusion. Moments later, the greenhouse erupted in light and sound, drawing the attention of the drones. They moved toward it, their sensors locked on the disturbance. Cale seized the opportunity, sprinting to a narrow ridge that overlooked the valley. From there, he could signal and mislead the drones, using false trails of heat and motion. Celine watched, her heart pounding. The precision of Cale's movements, his calm in the chaos, was remarkable. She realized that even without advanced technology, human instinct and courage could rival the most sophisticated machines. The drones faltered, some colliding with trees, others activating alarms that Cale had carefully set. Chaos reigned, and for a moment, the valley seemed alive with motion. Cale motioned for Celine to follow. Together, they moved toward the opposite edge of the property, careful to remain hidden. The drones, now confused, were less coordinated, giving them a small but critical advantage. Inside the house, Lena stirred, waking from a restless sleep. Cale returned briefly, crouching by her bed. "It's all right, Lena. Everything's okay." "Stay here." She nodded, eyes wide but trusting. "Papa, are we safe?" Cale smiled, ruffling her hair. "We will be. Just stay quiet and stay here." Celine joined him briefly, her gaze moving toward the horizon where the drones patrolled. "You're very brave," she said softly. "Not just for protecting your daughter, but for facing this head-on." Cale shrugged. "Bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what you must, even when fear is there." The drones began regrouping, their advanced programming adapting to the chaos. Cale knew this was the real test, keeping them occupied long enough without drawing them too close to Lena. He motioned to Celine, "We need another distraction. Something bigger." Celine considered the farm's small energy reserves. "I can create a temporary EMP blast. It will disable their sensors for a short time, but we'll need to move fast." Kale nodded. "Then let's do it." They worked together, combining human intuition and technological knowledge. Celine prepared the EMP device, while Kale guided her through the safest path to activate it. Once ready, she triggered the device, sending a pulse that momentarily blacked out the drone's sensors. Kale led them through the confusion, using hidden paths and natural cover. The drones, now blind and disoriented, crashed into trees and small hills, buying precious time. For the first time, Kale allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. "This should be enough to get Lena and us out safely," he said, breathing heavily. Celine nodded, watching him. "You're incredible at this. I've faced danger before, but your resourcefulness, it's impressive." Kale smiled faintly. "We've got to survive first. Then we can worry about everything else." By dawn, the drones had retreated slightly, regrouping beyond the valley. The night's chaos had bought them safety. But Kale knew the danger wasn't gone. Whoever sent these machines would return with more preparation, more technology, and more determination. Celine looked at him, a new respect forming in her eyes. "Kale, you're more than a simple farmer. You're extraordinary." Kale shook his head. "I'm just a father. I do what I have to do." She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "Sometimes, doing what you have to do is extraordinary enough." As the sun rose, lighting the valley in a soft golden glow, Kale and Celine surveyed the aftermath. Mud, debris, and damaged drones littered the land. But more importantly, they had survived together. Trust had grown between them, forged in the heat of danger. Lena awoke to find them outside, smiling and brushing mud from their clothes. "Papa, did we win?" Kale laughed softly. "We did, Lena. We did. And we're safe for now." Celine looked at the young girl and then back at Kale. "You've built more than a farm here. You've built protection, ingenuity, and courage. That's rare." Kale's smile was quiet, thoughtful. "It's all for her," he said, nodding toward Lena. "Everything I do, it's for her." Celine's eyes softened. "I understand that. And now, we'll face what comes next together." The sun climbed higher, casting warmth over the valley. The storm had passed, but a new kind of battle had begun. A battle of survival, strategy, and courage. Kale and Celine, unlikely allies, had proven that even the most advanced technology could be matched by human ingenuity. And as they prepared for what the next day might bring, Kale realized something profound. Some storms couldn't be seen in the sky. They came in the form of people, power, and danger. And sometimes, surviving them required more than strength. It required trust, collaboration, and the willingness to stand together against the impossible. The morning after the drones had retreated was calm, almost deceptively so. Sunlight spilled across the valley, reflecting off puddles left from the storm, and Lena ran barefoot through the damp grass, her laughter filling the small space of their home. Kale watched her, a sense of relief mingled with tension. The danger was not gone. It had only paused. Celine moved beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon, alert as ever. "They will return," she said quietly. "And next time, they won't come with just drones. They'll send people." Kale nodded. He had expected that. "Then we need a plan. Not just to survive, but to protect this place and Lena." Celine studied the valley, taking in the farm's layout, the hills, and the natural cover. "You've built a strong defense here," she said. "But it's not just the land or traps that matter. It's strategy, timing, and knowing your opponents. That's where I can help." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Help? You mean with technology?" She shook her head. "Not just technology. understanding them. I've dealt with people like this before, ruthless, calculating. They value power over life. We can anticipate their moves if we think carefully. Kale nodded slowly. He had always trusted instinct and experience. But her insights added another layer. Then we work together. But first, Lena stays out of harm's way. Lena, who had been listening, frowned. Kale crouched beside her. I know you can, sweetheart. But this is different. It's dangerous. We'll need your help when it's safe. Celine placed a reassuring hand on Lena's shoulder. Your papa is right. This is serious business. But when it's time, you'll see just how clever your papa is. The morning passed in a flurry of activity. Kyle reinforced windows, strengthened doors, and set additional traps, teaching Celine how to use natural cover and terrain to their advantage. Lena, though restricted from participating in the traps, helped carry supplies and learned the principles of survival, how to spot safe paths, where to hide, and the importance of vigilance. By midday, Celine had a plan. We can't just wait for them to come to us, she said. We need to act first, confuse them, and force them to reveal their numbers and strategies. That will give us a chance to defend effectively. Kale nodded. I can use the ridges and natural tunnels to guide them into traps. But we'll need a way to distract them, something big. Celine smiled faintly. Leave that to me. I've brought a few things you haven't seen yet. She produced a small device, sleek and glowing faintly. This will create a temporary electromagnetic pulse over a narrow area. It won't destroy them, but it will scramble sensors and communications long enough for us to move strategically. Kale studied it. Impressive. I guess not all visitors are just looking for shelter. She returned the smile. Not all visitors. No. Some learn from the wild, and some teach it a few lessons in return. As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, Kale and Celine prepared their positions. Lena was safely inside, instructed to stay quiet and remain out of sight. Kale glanced at her, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. Protecting a child in a world like this was no small feat. Celine crouched beside him. Ready? She asked. Kale took a deep breath. As ready as we'll ever be. The drones returned first, scouting the perimeter. Kale signaled to Celine, and she activated the EMP device, creating a pulse that temporarily disabled the machines. Chaos erupted as the drones collided with each other in the terrain, giving Kale the perfect opportunity to lead the real enemies, the human agents, into prepared areas. Hours passed in tense silence and careful maneuvering. Kale used every bit of his knowledge of the valley. Hidden ridges, shallow pits, natural tunnels, and false trails. Celine combined her expertise, predicting the agents' movements and adjusting their defenses in real time. Together, they became an efficient team, blending human intuition with advanced technology. By nightfall, the agents had begun to retreat. Frustrated by the obstacles and confusion, Kale allowed himself a small smile, though exhaustion weighed on him. We did it, he said softly. Celine nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon once more. For now. But they'll be back. They always come back. Kale looked at her, understanding fully. Then we keep getting better, stronger, smarter. That's how we survive. Celine's expression softened. I never realized. Having someone you can trust in this way makes all the difference. It's not just shelter. It's support, strategy, and courage. Kale smiled faintly. You don't get that from wealth or power. You get it from people who care. Celine looked at him, a rare warmth in her eyes. I think I understand now. That's why I came here. Even if I didn't realize it at first. As the night deepened, they shared a quiet moment, looking at the valley under the moonlight. The farm, the home, and Lena were all safe for the moment. But Kale knew the real battle was not just surviving the next attack. It was ensuring they could continue to live, to thrive, and to protect those they cared about, no matter what challenges came. Tomorrow, Cale said, breaking the silence. We plan for more than defense. We plan for resilience. This valley, this home, our lives, they're worth protecting. And we won't let anyone take them. Selene nodded, determination clear on her face. Agreed. And you've already taught me something important. Sometimes, courage, knowledge, and heart matter more than power and machines. Cale looked at her, seeing the truth in her words. Then let's use all three. Together. The night passed without further incident, but Cale stayed vigilant, patrolling near the house and checking the perimeters. Selene assisted, analyzing patterns and suggesting improvements to traps and alarms. The trust between them grew deeper, not just as allies but as partners in survival. Lena slept peacefully, unaware of the full extent of the dangers around her. Cale watched her for a moment, then turned to Selene. She'll grow up learning something I didn't expect, that the world can be dangerous, but courage and cleverness matter just as much as strength. Selene smiled faintly, and she'll see it firsthand in her father. As dawn approached, the first light illuminated the valley, reflecting off the dew-soaked plants and glistening puddles. Cale and Selene stood side by side, surveying the land they had protected and reinforced. Though the world beyond their valley was still dangerous, they knew they had built something more than shelter. They had built a strategy, a bond, and a promise to face what came next together. Cale turned to Selene. You came here looking for refuge. But this is bigger than that. We're creating more than safety. We're creating a future. Selene's eyes softened, a rare smile touching her lips. And I never realized how valuable something simple could be. Trust, cooperation, and courage. It's inspiring, Cale nodded. It's what humans do best. We survive, we adapt, and sometimes, we teach even the most powerful lessons without even knowing it. Selene looked out over the valley, her mind already planning for the challenges ahead. Then let's be ready. Together, we can face anything. Cale placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. Together, the sun rose higher, casting warmth over the valley. The farm, the house, and their lives had survived another night. And though danger lingered beyond the horizon, Cale, Selene, and Lena had something far stronger than fear or machines. Trust, courage, and the unshakable bond of human determination. The valley was quiet in the early morning light. The storm of the previous nights had passed, and even the tension of near-constant vigilance seemed to lift, if only slightly. Cale and Selene stood near the edge of the property, surveying the plains that stretched beyond their small farm. Lena played nearby, her laughter echoing softly across the damp earth. Cale took a deep breath, savoring the calm. But he knew it would not last. Whoever had sent the drones, and now the agents would return, more prepared, more determined. He turned to Selene. They'll come back, he said simply. Selene nodded, her eyes thoughtful. Yes. But now we know what they're capable of, and we know what we can do together. That gives us an advantage. Cale considered her words. It was true. They had survived, adapted, and outsmarted technology, and ruthless people alike. But this time, it would not be about hiding or improvising. They needed a plan to end the threat completely. Then we make them see that they can't win, Cale said. We turn the tables. And we do it carefully. Selene studied the valley and the surrounding terrain. We'll need more than traps. They're experienced, and they won't fall for simple tricks. But we can use the environment, the technology we have, and a little creativity. We can control their approach and force them to make mistakes. Cale nodded, and together, they worked through the morning. They reinforced existing defenses, planted decoys, and set clever distractions that could delay or confuse attackers. Selene used her tech skills to create temporary signal jammers, small devices that interfered with communication over short distances. Kale taught her how to read the land and predict movement based on terrain and weather. By midday, they were ready. Lena, curious but obedient, stayed inside, helping with small tasks like carrying supplies and watching from the safety of the house. Kale smiled at her diligence. "You're learning well," he said quietly. Celine joined him near the edge of the property, examining the valley from the same vantage point Kale had used to lead the drones before. "They'll likely approach the same way they did last time," she said. "But we can use that to our advantage," Kale agreed. "We'll make them think they know the terrain. Then we'll guide them into areas that favor us. They'll have the power and weapons, but we'll have strategy, preparation, and surprise." Hours passed, and the valley remained peaceful. Kale and Celine used the quiet to perfect their plan. Discussing contingencies, escape routes, and signals, they shared quiet laughter occasionally, lightening the tension. It was the first real moment of ease they had experienced since Celine's arrival. As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, the agents finally appeared. They moved cautiously, clearly aware of the previous night's failures. Drones flew overhead, scanning systematically. But Kale and Celine had anticipated this. Small jammers disrupted communications, and false heat sources led the drones off course. Kale and Celine moved with quiet precision. Hidden in the ridges, they watched as the agents followed the path they had carefully laid out. Each step brought the intruders closer to traps, natural obstacles, and distractions that slowed them without putting Lena at risk. One agent paused, sensing something unusual. A small pit, carefully concealed, caused him to stumble. Another tripped over a wire, triggering an alarm and causing confusion. Kale and Celine exchanged a brief, approving glance. Their teamwork was paying off. As the agents regrouped, Kale activated a series of signals they had set earlier: flashing lights, small noisemakers, and strategically placed reflective surfaces. Each element created the illusion of greater numbers, making the intruders cautious and hesitant. Celine activated a final device, a small EMP pulse that temporarily disabled all nearby drones and electronic equipment. The agents, now cut off from their advanced tools, found themselves facing a terrain they did not fully understand. Kale and Celine, familiar with every hill, tunnel, and ridge, moved through the shadows, ready to guide the situation to their favor. Kale whispered to Celine, "Time to finish this." Together, they executed the final part of their plan. Using hidden paths and elevated positions, they created the impression of overwhelming forces. The agents, disoriented and wary, began to retreat, misjudging distances and falling into harmless but immobilizing traps. Kale and Celine kept their movements minimal, observing the effects carefully. Finally, the intruders withdrew, frustrated and defeated not through violence, but through strategy, patience, and careful planning. Kale exhaled, relief flooding through him. He turned to Celine. "It's over for now." Celine allowed herself a small smile. "Yes, for now. But it's not just about surviving the next attack. It's about creating a future where we don't have to fight every day to live." Kale nodded. He watched Lena running across the valley, carefree and unafraid. This was what he had fought for: safety, freedom, and the chance to live without constant fear. Celine studied the farm, the home, and the surrounding land. "You've built more than just a house here, Kale. You've created a foundation for something greater, a place where people can feel safe, learn, and grow." "That's rare." Kale smiled quietly. "I didn't realize how much it mattered until now. And you've shown me that even someone used to power and influence can learn from simplicity, patience, and courage." Celine's gaze softened. "We've learned from each other. I came here needing shelter, but what I've found is far more valuable: trust, teamwork, and a sense of purpose." Kale nodded. "And you've taught me that even the most advanced technology can't replace human ingenuity and the courage to protect what matters." The sun dipped lower, painting the valley in warm shades of orange and gold. Kale, Celine, and Lena stood together, looking at the land they had defended. It was more than survival, it was a victory of strategy, collaboration, and trust. Selene turned to Kael. I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Not just for us, but for others like this valley, like your home. Kael raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I mean helping others, she said, using my resources, knowledge, and experience to ensure that places like this can thrive without constant fear. I've seen too much danger and control in my life. I want to create safety, not just for myself, but for people who need it. Kael considered her words. That's a big plan. But if anyone can do it, it's you. And I'll help in any way I can. Selene smiled. Then we start small. With this valley. If we succeed here, we can expand. Show others that survival, cooperation, and courage matter as much as technology and power. Kael looked at his daughter. Lena, you'll grow up knowing that courage and cleverness can protect people. That's a lesson worth more than anything else. N.2. Lena ran to them, her laughter unrestrained. Can we do it, Papa? Can we make it better? Kael knelt and hugged her. Yes, sweetheart. We already are. Selene stood beside them, feeling something she had not expected: hope. She had come seeking refuge, but she had found a partnership, a purpose, and a family in the process, and together they had proven that human courage, ingenuity, and trust could triumph over even the most advanced threats. The valley was safe. The storm of machines and agents had passed, and now Kael, Selene, and Lena could look forward to a future they would build together, a future of resilience, protection, and growth. Kael turned to Selene, a quiet determination in his eyes. This is just the beginning. We've survived, yes, but now we create. A place where courage, trust, and knowledge can grow. Together, Selene nodded. Together, the sun rose higher, illuminating a valley that had been tested and had endured. And in that light, the small family, Kael, Lena, and Selene stood ready to face whatever came next. Not with fear, but with confidence, unity, and hope. For the first time in months, Kael allowed himself to truly relax, knowing that the danger they had faced had not broken them. Instead, it had made them stronger, wiser, and ready for the future. And as they watched the valley shimmer in the morning sun, Kael realized that giving shelter had been just the first step. The real journey of trust, courage, and growth was only beginning. Together, they would face it.